The hollow ones, the first scream came from the pine woods beyond the lake, somewhere between the moonlit water and the crumbling ruins of the old cabin nobody dared enter. Thomas Crane heard it just before midnight, as he stood on the porch of his family's lodge, cigarette burning low between his fingers, the wind curling around him like a whisper. It wasn't an animal, not a fox, not a coyote, not the lonely cry of a loon. It was too deliberate, too shaped. It rose with purpose, faltered, then twisted into something almost human, like a voice that didn't quite know how to be a voice. He froze. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the bugs and the slow hiss of wind through the trees. Then came the second scream, shorter, more urgent, and unmistakably wrong, like it had been made by something mimicking pain, or practicing it. Thomas stubbed out his cigarette and stepped inside the lodge, locking the door behind him. His brother Alex was already asleep, sprawled across the lumpy couch with a half-empty beer and the dog, Murphy, curled at his feet. The generator buzzed quietly in the back room, powering the bare minimum: lights, fridge, and the old radio no one used anymore. Thomas didn't wake him. He just stood there in the dark kitchen, the scream replaying in his head. They had come to the lodge to fix the place up. A last-ditch effort to sell the family property before winter buried it under snow and silence. It was miles from the nearest road, 30 from the nearest town, and hadn't been lived in full time since their grandfather died 6 years ago. Everyone said it was a bad idea. Too isolated, their cousin Nina had warned. That place, it remembers things. People don't come back from there the same. Thomas had laughed at the time. But now, in the quiet, with the wind pressing against the window panes and the echo of that scream still burning in his ears, he wasn't laughing. The next morning, he went to the lake. Murphy followed at his heels, ears up, tail down, uneasy in a way the old shepherd rarely was. The forest felt too quiet. Not calm, watchful, the kind of quiet that waits for you to say the wrong thing. He reached the shore and looked across the water to the ruins on the far side. There had once been another house there, long before Thomas was born. Just stone walls now, hunched like bones sticking out of the earth. That was where the scream had come from. He was sure of it. He stood there a long time, waiting for something to move. But nothing did, not even the trees. That night, something knocked on the window. Thomas was half asleep on the couch, Alex still out cold upstairs. The knock came softly at first, a polite tap, and then again harder. He opened his eyes, heart already pounding. Murphy stood frozen, hackles raised, staring at the window. Thomas got up quietly and crossed the floor. He pulled the curtain aside. Nothing, just trees, moonlight, the long dark stretch of the woods beyond the lawn. Then the knock came again from the other window. He spun around. Again, nothing there. But now Murphy was growling. Low, constant, like he could see something his owner couldn't. Thomas backed away from the window. Alex, he called upstairs. You awake? No answer. A third knock. This time from the kitchen. That was enough. He grabbed a shotgun from the rack above the fireplace, just in case, and stalked into the kitchen. Slowly, every floorboard creaked like a scream. He flipped on the porch light and opened the back door. No one there, but the smell. Something rank drifted in on the wind, like rotting leaves and wet fur. Something dead that didn't know it was dead yet. Murphy whined behind him. Thomas shut the door, locked it, bolted it. The next day, Alex was different. He didn't say anything at first, just drank his coffee and stared out the window like he was listening to something. You hear anything last night? Thomas asked. Alex shook his head. Slept like the dead. Funny, Thomas said. Someone was knocking. Alex didn't respond. Murphy wouldn't go near him, not even when Alex dropped bacon on the floor. That afternoon, Thomas found footprints in the woods. They weren't his. They weren't Alex's. They weren't human. They were wrong. Like someone had tried to make them look human, but got the spacing wrong. The weight distribution. Like a child drawing feet who didn't understand how walking worked. They went in circles, back and forth, around the house. One set led up to the window, stopped there, then vanished. No return path. No signs of departure. Just gone. At sunset, Thomas confronted Alex. You went outside last night. Nope. Don't lie to me. I didn't, Alex said. Then, after a pause, why would I? Thomas didn't answer, but something in Alex's smile wasn't quite right. It looked like his brother's face. It moved like his brother's mouth, but it felt hollow, like someone had dressed up in Alex's skin and was trying to remember how it worked. That night, Thomas didn't sleep. Neither did Murphy. He began keeping a journal. He documented every sound, every oddity, every time Alex stared too long or tilted his head in a way that was just off. The knocking came again and again, sometimes from the walls, sometimes from the roof. Once, it came from inside the fireplace. Thomas set up trail cams. In the morning, the memory cards were blank. Or worse, overwritten with static. He began dreaming of voices, of people calling his name from the lake, of pale shapes watching him from the trees, of faces in the mirror that weren't his own. On the seventh day, Alex was gone. No note, no blood, no sign of struggle. Just gone. Murphy howled once, low and grieving, and then refused to enter the house again. Thomas searched the woods. He screamed his brother's name until his throat bled. Nothing, just footprints again, leading in circles. One pair, his own, frenzied, searching. One pair, inhuman, always just behind. Thomas didn't leave the house for 2 days. He boarded the windows, bolted the doors. He kept the shotgun by his side and Murphy closer still. He rationed the food, powered down the generator, and kept the lights off after sunset. He didn't trust the dark, but he trusted what came with it even less. Sometimes he heard footsteps in the attic, even though it had been empty for years. Other times, the wind carried his brother's voice, calling, laughing, whispering words he didn't understand. Murphy barked at corners where nothing moved. He paced at night, ears flat, tail rigid. Then, on the 9th night, Thomas heard the front door open. He hadn't touched it, hadn't unlatched the bolts. It swung inward, slow and silent. And standing there, framed by moonlight, was Alex. "Hey man," he said, "where the hell have you been?" He looked normal. Same face, same clothes, same crooked grin. But Murphy growled, deep, guttural, and backed into the kitchen. Thomas didn't lower the shotgun. Alex blinked. "What's your problem?" "You're not him." "What?" "You're not my brother." Alex stepped forward. Thomas cocked the gun. "Don't." Alex stopped. Then, slowly, he smiled wider than should have been possible. The corners of his mouth stretched to his ears. His jaw hung loose. His eyes sank backward in their sockets, leaving behind wet hollows of darkness. And then he blinked, and the face was normal again. "Come on, man," Alex said. "I'm cold. Let me in." Thomas slammed the door shut. He didn't sleep that night. In the morning, he found footprints again, this time inside the house, leading from the fireplace to the bedroom, to the mirror, and then nowhere at all. He checked the attic. Empty. But something had written in the dust with a finger. "Let US where you he packed his bags." He would leave that night, hike the trail, get back to the truck, burn the whole goddamn lodge down if he had to. But the forest wouldn't let him go. Every path turned back on itself. The compass spun without end. The GPS read 0. The trees grew denser the farther he walked, even as he followed the markers carved by his grandfather decades ago. At one point, he found a second version of a lodge. Same door, same porch, same busted window, but completely overgrown, as though it had been abandoned for years. It shouldn't have been there. He ran. When he returned to the real lodge, or what he thought was real, the sun had set. The door was open. Murphy was gone. The fireplace was burning, even though no one had lit it. And sitting in front of the flames were 6 people, all of them wearing his face. Not Alex. Not strangers. Him. Some were crying. Some were laughing. One just sat there, staring at the flames, jaw slack, skin melting slowly down the side of his face. They all turned to look at him when he entered. "Which one are you?" one asked. Thomas raised the shotgun. "What the hell is this?" "We're trying," said another. "We're trying to remember." "Remember what?" "What it was like to be one thing, instead of many." They moved toward him. He fired. The one in front dropped, but instead of blood, a black, oily steam hissed from its chest, rising like smoke. The body fell apart, not decaying, but unforming, limbs turning translucent, features unraveling into pale sludge. The others didn't react. "You wear him well," said one. "We wore him too, but he broke." "You'll break," whispered another. Thomas ran. He didn't know how long he wandered after that. The days bled together. The sky never looked quite right. The stars moved when they shouldn't. Tom didn't pass the same way. Hunger came and went like a fever. The trees watched, and in the distance always was a mirror. Sometimes it was hanging from a tree, sometimes half buried in the dirt. Once it was floating in the lake like a water lily. And always, when he looked inside, it showed someone else wearing his skin, smiling, practicing, mimicking. Eventually, he found the ruins, the stone house beyond the lake, the place the first scream had come from. Inside was a circle of bones, not buried, arranged, ritualistic. Some of them were animal, most were not. On the wall, scrawled in something that might once have been blood, was a single phrase: "A body is just a door." He burned it all. The ruins, the forest around it, the trail cams, the journals, the photographs, the masks. Because that's what they were. Masks. The faces, the voices, the lives. They weren't alive. They were just being worn. And he knew that one of them had already worn him. But when the fire died, Thomas was still there. Alone. Not burned. Not dead. Just changed. He looked into the lake. His reflection was still his. But only when he concentrated. If he relaxed, even for a second, the shape changed. Sometimes it was Alex. Sometimes it was one of the others from a fire. Once it was his grandfather. And just once, it was nothing at all. Just a smear. A suggestion. A shape trying to remember how to be a face. Thomas left the lodge after that. Or he thinks he did. The memory of the road back is hazy. Like a fever dream. He remembers the sound of boots on gravel, the static buzz of the radio tower in town, and the old gas station attendant who stared too long and said nothing when he bought a pack of cigarettes and a coffee. He remembers calling Mina, telling her he was back, telling her Alex was missing. She came to pick him up, eyes wide, face pale. "You're thinner," she said quietly. He didn't reply. He was too busy watching his reflection in the window of her truck. It smiled when he didn't. Weeks passed. Thomas moved into his old apartment, tried to live a normal life. But normal had changed. At night, he heard things in the hallway. Feet that didn't echo right. Scratching behind the walls. Breathing beneath the floorboards. He'd wake with memories that weren't his. Running barefoot through trees he didn't know. Holding hands with strangers whose names burned away on his tongue. The mirror was the worst. Sometimes it didn't show him at all. Other times, it showed someone standing behind him, someone wearing his face. Smiling. Nina came by one evening. She brought photos, old family pictures. "Do you remember this trip?" she asked, pointing to a cabin by a lake. He stared at the photo. It looked familiar, but not the way it should have. It was like looking at a stage set, a memory built from outside. "I don't think that was me," he said. She frowned. "Tom, are you okay?" He almost told her then. About the lodge. About Alex. About the hollow ones. But how could he explain it? That something had stepped into him? That something had worn him like a coat? That he wasn't sure anymore if he'd ever really been real to begin with? One night, Thomas found his reflection waiting for him. Not in the mirror. In the hallway. A perfect copy. Same clothes. Same scars. Same tired eyes. It smiled. "I'm ready," it said. "For what?" "To be you." He raised the gun. One he bought out of fear, one he kept loaded always. His double didn't flinch. "You'll forget," it whispered. "They all do. Once we take. Once we learn. You'll just be another coat." He fired. The thing collapsed, not bleeding but peeling. Layers of flesh folding away like paper. Bones unraveling like string. The face melted last, still smiling as it dissolved into a dark puddle of ash and memory. He ran. The hollow ones are everywhere now. He sees them in crowds. People who don't blink quite right, who smile too long, who laugh with a beat too late, who watch him when they think he isn't looking. They move from body to body, from voice to voice, looking for the perfect shape to wear forever. Some of them have settled. Some are still trying things on. They wear our parents, our friends, our neighbors. They wear our grief, too, mimicking the dead, so we'll let them close. Thomas learned that the hard way. One night, Alex came back. He was standing outside Thomas's apartment, shivering in the rain. "Let me in," he said. "I am sorry. I got lost." Thomas almost did, almost believed it, until Alex smiled, and his teeth were wrong. He moves now, never stays in one place too long. The hollow ones can mimic voices, faces, habits, but not memories. Not deeply, not for long. That's the only way to tell. Ask them something small, something personal. Ask them what the house smelled like on Christmas morning. Ask them who they kissed in 6th grade. Ask them what their mother said before the funeral. If they pause, even for a second run, because they don't remember, they only wear. And now Thomas writes. He documents every encounter, every strange face, every too perfect smile. He fills notebooks with drawings, with symbols, with maps of places that don't exist on any GPS. He's not sure who he is anymore. Not sure if he's even still the real Thomas Crane. But he remembers enough. Enough to fight. Enough to warn. Enough to keep others from becoming just another skin. Thomas kept driving until the neon glow of roadside diners and highway signs felt normal again, until the horizon stopped bending into impossible shapes. But even in cities, the hollow ones walked among crowds, faces with quirks just off, voices that hesitated, laughter too faint or too sharp. He avoided reflective surfaces. He refused to sleep in the same bed 2 nights in a row. Still, every morning he awoke to footprints on the bathroom floor. Not his boots, but narrower, more delicate steps. He stopped using doors. He climbed through windows and stayed ready, hammer in hand, to board up any entry. He traded guns for tools, convinced that the hollow ones could slip bullets or turn shells to ash, but they could never forge steel. They couldn't replicate cold, hard angles. One evening, searching for safe refuge, he stumbled on an online forum hidden deep inside Tor servers, a support group for survivors of the Hollow Ones. Only a handful of active members, each with a story something like his. The cousin who vanished overnight, the roommate found in the attic staring without blinking, the stranger on a flight who recited your secrets word for word. They exchanged tips, asked them to recite your favorite childhood poem backwards. Show them a photograph and ask which holiday it was taken. Use mirror glass instead of a reflective surface. They bug out at the wrong physics. He learned the hollow ones feared 2 things, exposure and identity. If forced to speak or show their true face, they dissolved, just as he'd seen. But they also feared being forgotten. Their very existence depended on memory. If everyone forgot your name, you ceased to be real enough to wear. Armed with this knowledge, Thomas planned one final confrontation. He returned to the lodge. The place still smoldered where he'd torched the ruins 6 years before, trees regrowing like scar tissue. But the cabin itself stood intact, as though it had been rebuilt by unseen hands. The windows were clean. The porch light hung swinging, blinking on and off. He walked to the door and found Alex waiting. Real Alex this time, or maybe not. Branches and moonlight cast mottled patterns on his brother's face. Alex's eyes flickered with relief or delight. "Tom," he said, voice low and familiar. "You came back." Thomas held up a battered mirror. "Tell me what I whispered before you died." Alex hesitated, mouth twitching. He opened his lips, closed them, then whispered the wrong words. "That's it," Thomas shouted, and if Alex it was shuddered. Flesh rippled like water. The mouth stretched wider than humanly possible, jaws unhinging, teeth spinning into a jagged halo. The thing tried to speak, but only gargled a hollow sound. Then it collapsed, melting into nothing but smoke and shadow. Thomas waited. The wind stilled. In the stillness, the forest seemed to exhale. He entered the lodge. Inside, the walls were lined with photographs, Polaroids pinned up in a grid. All of them were people he had known. Family portraits, friend group selfies, random snapshots of smiling strangers. Under each was a caption, scrawled in charcoal. "Remember her. remember him. Some names were crossed out. Some images were replaced with empty frames. The floor was littered with journals, open to pages filled with frantic symbols and pleas. Don't forget, hold on to me. At the center of the room sat a lone figure, a woman with curly hair, elbows on knees, staring at her reflection in a hand mirror. She wore the skin of someone named Clara, based on the name sign beneath her picture. Thomas choked back the urge to raise his weapon. He studied her, careful, deliberate. She was alive in that moment, uneasy but solid, not yet unraveling. He cleared his throat. Clara. She looked up, eyes the color of wet ash. Thomas, she said, voice shaky but real. They told me you'd come. He stepped forward. I'm here to end it. She blinked. You can? He held up a Polaroid of her, taken 2 summers ago, Clara laughing on a dock. Tell me every detail, he prompted. The color of the water, the name of the boat, what song played on the radio. Her eyes filled with tears. She stared at the photograph. The water was greenish blue. It was called Serenity, Dad's old bass boat. He played Edelweiss when we left the dock. She paused, breath shaking, then delivered the rest flawlessly. Thomas watched her steady, human. The tremor in her reflection eased. The mirror fogged, then cleared. She looked at him. Please, help the others. Thomas nodded. I will. They didn't speak of how many hollow ones remained, but together they boarded the windows, set up sheets of mirror glass and photographs around the lodge, an onion of memories meant to trap, to test, to purge. Journal lists hung from every beam. Names of friends and family, dates, odd details like the last dream you had or the first song that made you fall in love. The point, to hold on so tight that the hollow ones would break if they tried to wear any of them. In the dead hours before dawn, the thing came. At first a whisper in the attic, then footsteps on the ceiling. The glass trembled. The photographs fluttered, pages ruffling like the wings of crows. 1,000 silent eyes watched from every frame. Thomas and Clara stood back to back, mirrors and Polaroids clutched in their fists. A figure melted through the wall, a silhouette wearing the twisted grin of a man Thomas had known in town. Then another, until the room filled with bodies shapeless, sliding like smoke suddenly given form. They reached for the photographs, their arms stretching at impossible angles. Thomas shouted names. Jason, Michael, Anna. Every face in the room answered, whispering back details nobody else knew. The distortions paused, flickered. Something in the shapeshifter's eyes, if eyes they had, shattered. Their forms peeled. Screams echoed, not human screams, but the popping of hollow puppets undone. One by one, they collapsed into piles of ash and echo. Only silence reigned. At sunrise, Thomas and Clara opened the front door. Outside lay empty ash heaps, smoking in the dawn light. The forest around the lodge sighed, leaves rustling like the pages of a closed book. Clara leaned against Thomas. Is it over? He looked at her, at every photograph of someone they had lost or saved. For now, he said, but they're still out there. They'll come back. She nodded, then held out her hand. He took it. Together, they walked toward the road, leaving the burning lodge behind. The ashes formed a dark ring at the clearing's center, like a sealing circle. Beyond it, the trees seemed quieter, respectful. For a moment, Thomas felt something almost like peace. He never saw Clara again after that. Some days later, he found a postcard on his windshield. Thank you. Love, Clara. P.S. I remembered you, completely. He drove to the edge of town, where the highway split into the forest road leading back to the hollow ones. He left a mirror glass shard nailed to a post and a Polaroid pinned beneath it, his own smiling face. And as he drove away, he thought he heard a whisper, remember me. He didn't look back. The Yinny thank you for watching. Consider subscribing for future stories. Have a good sleep.